all of you are most welcome to this webinar called How to Avoid the Most Common IT Challenges. My name is Martin Whitlock. I'm the CTO at Telenor Connection. And this webinar is based on findings that we have also released in one of our latest white papers covering the same topic, which is actually then to avoid challenges and try to make your IT solutions successful and scale in the pace they are intended to. Just as a quick start introduction, then I guess since you have tuned in here, you're at least fairly familiar of who Telenor IT is, but I will recap that as well. We are part of Telenor Group, and we focus entirely on serving the market with IoT services. We have different units. We have both the different business units with the local market focus, and then we have the organization called Telenor Connection, which is the one I'm representing mostly, focusing on connecting enterprises of typically larger size and make sure that they have availability across the world. And we have been doing this for quite some time, 20 plus years, as it says on the screen here. And I think that is also one of the reasons of the backgrounds for this white paper and the webinar today, because throughout these years we have seen things that has happened that has worked well, and we have seen things that may have worked less well, and that is information that we would like to share with you so that we all can have a successful IoT business going forward. But with that said, how does it come then that some companies succeed in their IT journeys where others don't? And how can you avoid them making the same mistakes that others have done? I think that is, of course, a billion-dollar question, and we won't probably cover everything in this session, but hopefully we will at least raise some awareness on this topic. But just one of the things that made us go this route, we have actually made a study ourselves where we try to identify what is the success rate of IT projects, and we have done this together with reference cases and looking at our experience in the building. What we found out was that looking at the original ambitions that were set out, it's only about 10% of the companies that reach 20% of those targets within the first 3 years. And that is, of course, maybe a consequence of having ambitious targets. That is always good, I think. But of course, there's something in here as well that says that maybe the IoT journey has become more complex or something than originally intended. I think the statement is supported also by Gartner, who has said that 75% of all IT projects will take 2 times as long as planned, and of course then also lead to additional costs along the way. So what we want to do is to turn this around together with you, make sure that we all have a better outcome than this, because at the end of the day, our customer success is our success, and that's for I think we all need to work together and share experiences. We believe that these pitfalls or challenges, they can occur basically anywhere where you are in your IT journey, and trying to simplistically divide this IT journey in 4 stages. We have the analysis phase, where you start to look at your case and what you want to do and how to do it. Then you go into development phase to realize the solution as such, and hopefully then it works well, and you go into market phase and scale up phase, where you bring it to the market and make sure that all of your customers are starting to use it. And then once that's done, you also have the operational maintenance phase to account for. We do believe that it's not a one-way journey, so there are for sure elements of iterations between these steps, but roughly this is mostly how it looks like for most IT implementations. Starting then in the analysis phase, what do you do then? Well, you need to understand your starting point. What capabilities do you have in-house? Where do you need support, and so on? But also, what are you actually trying to realize? And this is maybe one of the first pitfalls, that you haven't mapped that out, at least not in its entirety. There may be certain elements that are in focus, and you know that you should have a value from your IT solution from a specific point of view, but maybe sometimes enterprises should also try to broaden that view and see, once we're doing this now, are there any other things to consider? And of course, that means that you need to map out your business drivers in the end. Why are you doing this? Is this to generate new revenue streams, or provide stickiness with your customers, or to reduce costs either for yourself or your customers? Or is it a combination of many things? And maybe here is the time where you also need to engage with your entire organization and look upon things not only from one discipline, but actually form a multi-skilled team that takes different perspectives into account, and better do that early on in the phase rather than maybe complementing things too late in the process, where you need to do a big pivot and go back to phase one to correct things because you just haven't thought about them. So align that buy-in in the organization is one of the vital things early on, and also plan for the future. And I think this links maybe good into my next slide here, which is covering the control of the TCO, the total cost of ownership, because I don't think that it's recommended or even possible to front load it, sit down and totally analyze everything that has to do with your lifecycle management of this solution from start and have that mapped out. But there are certain elements or the high level picture which I think is important to at least get your eyes on early on, and that includes both aspect that has to do with the actual project cost. What will it cost us to get this solution in place? The first minimum viable product, the POCs, maybe into scaling that up and so on, and then also link it to the operational costs that follow, because if you're not having those perspectives from day one, you may have prioritized one or the other and end up either in a solution that once it's actually launched to the market, it becomes too expensive either to roll out because there's been too much technology built into it, or too much feature making the overall solution too costly, and therefore it doesn't scale for that reason, or it's too costly to operate. Maybe you don't have the organization in place. I will come back to that as well. But likewise, if you focus too much on having your operational situation in place, maybe it takes too long time to execute on the project. So there's a fine line balance here. I think the recommendation is to consider both these aspects early on. Then there may not be a blueprint that suits everybody, but at least have that perspective in mind. Based on that, entering the development phase. Here, of course, there are a lot of different design choices to be made. And I think in that journey, we see often that many companies are focusing quite a lot on the technology choices to be made. That's, of course, important. But what unfortunately is underestimated quite often is the software values, the process transformations, and the other things that are dependent upon a successful IT launch later on. So you might have mapped out your business objectives in the first phase, and that's good, and you might have selected the right technology to build the solution as such, but unless you prepare your organization and the processes, you might not be able to launch the service in an efficient way, and then it gets stuck in that phase, and that's unfortunate. I think one thing that we see is the fact that many companies, of course, have legacy IT systems in place. This could be ERP systems, CRM systems, or something like that. And you want to maybe integrate the IT solution into that because it seems to be a convenient way of launching your total services. However, quite often these legacy systems are not built for purpose for a near real-time IT solution, and it might actually be even better to try to do those IT solutions a little bit on the side, at least to start with, and look at transformational processes in parallel, making that work over time, because otherwise you may end up in a situation where, yeah, we cannot do anything with IT data that we are generating because the IT systems and backends that we have are not in place. So maybe take an easier way out there, at least in the beginning, and make sure that you have systems that are fit for purpose, and optimize that along the way once you see that your solutions are actually scaling. On that note, I think also this could be done then also with a build versus buy perspective. Should I build all this on my own, Do I have the labor and the competence in-house to do this on my own, or should I try to find a solution that is available on the market? And of course, when IoT solutions now are becoming more and more mainstream, there are many different players out there who can support in that. It also relates to the statement from McKinsey here that a lot of companies experience that they will have shortage on this kind of technology competence in the coming 5 years. So maybe it's not anything that you should embark on building up in-house yourself, but rather stick to your last, so to say. That said, key takeaways. Avoid trying to specify the perfect technical solution. It should be good, but don't forget to also focus on the commercial efforts and the processes and transformations that follows. Evaluate managed services for those parts that are not part of your core, either core competence or your core business value that you drive. Make sure that you don't lose eyes on your own enterprise business that you have, whether that is within management of utilities or cars or fleet or whatever it is. That's what you supposedly are best at in your domain, and let the IoT business come from the side and get help from people who work and breathe IoT on a daily basis. And finally, assess your internal capabilities and organize yourself so that you can focus similarly from that perspective. Then going into the market, taking this solution and hopefully scale it. I think that one of the prerequisites that we hope that you have had, even if you have come so far in the process, you probably have a strong management support behind you. And I think that cannot be said enough times either, that having management buy-in on this, because it's typically a transformation journey of some sort, that is critical. But also beyond that, communicating this in your organization, I think, is equally important. We have actually seen organizations which have had this strong management buy-in, which is good, but unless the rest of the team understands that this is more than just a symbolic digitalization journey that is initiated to suit the board of directors or whatever, but actually something that is intended to lead to clear targets and bottom line contribution, that is also something you need to communicate out. And that may be even painful for some people in the staff that are used to doing business in a certain way and maybe have even their competence doing business in a certain way. Now suddenly you're starting to aim for selling a product as a service, or going digital services instead of just selling hardware, which you have been doing before, and so on. So preparing for that and making sure that your processes, once again, your organization is rigged for that, and bridging the skill gaps that might exist. I think some of our companies that have, or customers that have been very successful in their IT business, I know have spent a lot of energy traveling around to the sales teams and the distributors and partners that are related to the go-to-market, and training them and holding their hand and showing them how to do it, and really taking them through that journey to make sure that the message is fully transparent all the way out in the organization. And then you can also expect to get the benefits from it. So takeaways: prepare for it and don't underestimate the go-to-market approach that needs to be taken care of. Secure strong involvement both from the management, and also communicate that out to your organizations and continuously iterate it. Maybe even try out on a sub-brand or one product and do this iteratively, but at least make sure that whatever you do it full end-to-end. And then securing internal and external understanding. I think if you have invested in an IT solution, you should also invest in your sales team and go-to-market team to bring it out to the market. That goes without saying, hopefully. Final phase then, the operational and maintenance phase. What about that? Well, hopefully at this point you have a solution that has scaled. And what comes next then is to map the expectations towards the market. And since we're talking about digital solutions, it's IT solutions that are most likely providing information and integrated in other players' IT backends in some sort. There's also an increasing expectations of uptime of monitoring of these services and making sure that the performance is sustainable. Here, obviously, if you haven't planned for it already, you need to know now, and hopefully you have done it early on, to plan for an organization to take care of that. You probably need, to some extent at least, a 24/7 overview of how your IoT solution is performing. And if you don't have that set up yourself, make sure that you take advantage of organizations that are doing this 24/7. It might even be so that you have several suppliers of some sort engaged in your IoT value chain, and all of these suppliers need to support you, of course, in getting this up and running. Maybe you can even find a partner that can take responsibility for more than just one part of the value chain and gain benefits from that perspective. You need also to think about the life cycle management of these products. I think one lesson that a lot of enterprises have learned is that the life cycle of a digital solution, an IoT solution, is usually much shorter than the life cycle of a manufactured solution, hardware. Depending, of course, which industry you're representing, but many industries, they have products that are designed to last for 15, 20 years maybe, while we know that the life cycle of cellular technology, fortunately and unfortunately, have a shorter cycle than that. It could be so that we introduce new technologies in 5 years span. Hopefully the legacy ones will continue, but that's not always the case. So think ahead, plan for having solutions that can be remotely upgraded, that can be for purposes of handling security aspects. Cybersecurity is something we all need to take very seriously these days. It could be so that you need to launch additional digital services requiring updates and so on. So here you need to select the right solutions to allow for that, and also keeping that in mind. Key takeaways. Try to plan early on, as mentioned already in the beginning as well, the operational phase, so that you have the right partners and you have the right setups organizationally to handle this once it's scaled. Hopefully you don't need to build it up in a way that you are up front with your investments, but can rather have a model that grows once your IT solution is also growing. But make sure you have clear responsibilities between your dealers and service teams and suppliers and others engaged, so that everybody knows what is their task in this operational phase. Make sure you do this launch in a way that you can cater for future product lifecycle management activities, and as mentioned, evaluate partners and service providers that can support you in this, because it's not for sure that it's the right thing for your own organization to take responsibility for everything. That might be just too massive. You need to most likely focus on other things, like taking the solutions to market and making it fit to your own portfolio. So with that, how do you sum this up? Well, you can for sure dig much deeper into this, and I hope that you all feel that if you have questions and so on, you can reach out to us at Telenor. We are, as I mentioned, more than happy to support all of you, because your success is our success. But then a few points to consider. Don't only focus on the technology and finding the perfect technical solution. That might sound strange coming from a CTO, but I stand behind it fully. Because otherwise, even if you have a perfect technical solution, it doesn't mean much unless you can see it scale, and that's what we all want to do. So consider also the business processes, the objectives, the internal transformations, and so on. Uplifting your sales staff and partners to understand what they need to do in order to sell these new services, and then it most likely all will fit together. Don't necessarily do everything on your own, but rather find the right partners that can help you keep your time to market targets in place, and also think about the maintenance phase early in the design phase, and stay agile on that. That doesn't mean that you need to have it all figured out in detail, but at least you have it on the radar early on, so that you have a plan, a master plan, and then you can continue to optimize and work along the way, but avoid nasty surprises that will come up late in the phase, and when it's most likely much more difficult to address this. If you are interested in more information, please search for the white paper that's available on the website and so, or reach out to any Telenor representatives, myself included. I think hopefully we can help each other from there. So with that, have a very nice day going forward, and hope to see you soon again.